Hi, I'm Gillian and welcome to the show. I offer spiritual growth for the rebel soul, guiding you through the labyrinth of your own ascension path. This show is for the rebel souls that challenge the status quo, those that crave authenticity in every single aspect of their lives, that desire to embrace their uniqueness, follow their passions, connect to their soul and live according to who they truly are, even if that means having the courage to go against the grain or the norms of society. If that's you, my spiritual soul seeker, rebel warrior, then this is the place for you. On this podcast, we speak about everything from spirituality, sexuality, conscious relationships, business, and literally everything in between. So if that's your jam, then stay tuned. And go on, be a rebel and subscribe. You know you want to. In today's episode, I'm gonna let you in on what I know and what I've personally experienced about what happens when we die. So I'm gonna go into the whole crossing over process, the lives between lives review, and I'm gonna talk about what happens when spirits actually get stuck between realms. I'm gonna talk about why this happens and what you can actually do to help them cross over. Yes, we can actually help them cross over, and you don't have to be a magician to do this. Anyone can do this with their own intuitive abilities. So, what actually happens when we die? So, when we die, our consciousness actually separates from our body. And I have done thousands of past life regression sessions now, and in that point of passing in those lifetimes, most people describe like a feeling of lifting out or detaching or see themselves floating above the body and looking down. And in that moment, there's no actual pain point. Even if the death was like super traumatic, there's never a feeling of pain. And this is like what I would class as the initial sense of awareness. So when our soul has this level of awareness that we are no longer attached to the body. And then what happens is that our soul goes to what's called a life between lives review. So like I said, some people see their body, below them and they're kind of floating upwards. Some people at that point see their loved ones or their guides or a bright light that they're being guided into. And this kind of phase of the crossing over process is kind of like an orientation, right? It's where your soul recognizes that it's no longer bound to physical form. And then there's kind of like a transition. So this is like what I would class as like an energetic gateway. So again, it can show up differently for different people, but usually it's really, really similar. And again, I've done thousands of these, and the process of how people describe it and explain it, and also, I've done hundreds of my own, is very, very similar, which is fascinating. So fascinating to me. So it's kind of like, I guess, a tunnel, or some people see it like a light, or kind of like a threshold. So it's kind of basically the vibrational shift into the non-physical world from this physical world. And then what happens when our soul kind of transmutes up to this place, it reunites with our loved ones and our spirit guides. And again, so many people, so many souls are met by beings that they recognize, because it helps them kind of like ease out of their earthly attachments, and then helps them to step into like what I would class as like this integration and healing stage. So this is where you go through as a soul out of the human body, you actually go through a life review. Okay. So that life review is basically where you go through the perspective of what you've lived, what you felt, how you impacted the people in your life, what you achieved based on what you wanted to achieve in that lifetime. And it's a really cool process to take my clients through, because it's kind of like a 360-degree multi-sensory replay of your life, but from like a really expanded perspective. Because again, we as humans have a very limited perspective on things, but as a soul, out of the confines of the skin suit, we can see things from a much higher perspective. And in this life between lives review, you don't just see your actions, but you actually feel the impact of all of your choices on all of the other souls that you've interacted with in that lifetime too. And it's really interesting to go through this, because even if you hadn't done, say, like great things or achieved what you wanted to, in this place, there's really there's no shame, there's no judgment. It's a really neutral space, and it really gives like a deep understanding and level of compassion of that lifetime that you've just lived. It's like a really zoomed out view, like from this much higher perspective. Then again, when we're tied to that skin suit, we have an ego that comes with being human. And our soul, like our spirit, our soul is beyond wise, and in that process, when we go through this, it's kind of like, I can only describe it as being like wrapped in unconditional love while you're learning from your experiences during this review ultimately. And this is the stage that's kind of like for your soul's healing. It's for your soul's integration, where you can really take in and absorb your growth. You can release anything that you need to let go of, any regret, whatever it might be, and start preparing for your next step. And the next step could be resting in spirit. It could be reincarnating and planning a new incarnation, because, some souls, we can decide that we want to come back straight away. Maybe we want to learn something new. Maybe we had something unfinished. Or our spirit, our soul can just decide to stay in spirit. They can stay there for however long. They can heal. And like this part of it, I think, is really hard to quantify, because time is just a human concept, right? It doesn't work like that. Linear time does not work in the spirit world at all. So, if someone asks me, oh, well, how long before we reincarnate? Or how long did my soul stay in the last in the spirit world before I incarnated again? It's like time is literally a human construct. So it's really, it's hard to quantify. But these are the options, right? Our soul can choose to be a guide for someone else during their incarnation. Our soul can, again, stay in the spirit world and do that, or just hang out in the spirit world and do whatever. Or it can literally start planning for its next lifetime, the things that it wants to understand, the things how it wants to grow, how it wants to evolve, the human condition that it wants to experience. Maybe the things, again, that it didn't get to fully achieve in the last lifetime that it wanted to. So, there's so many different complexities and facets to it. It is so fascinating every single time that I do this process for myself, or every time that I take a client through this. It's so cool to see the similarities and the patterns of what happens as a soul. Now, obviously, as being a psychic medium, I'm able to speak to and connect to the souls, the spirits that have fully crossed over, right? Like those are who we speak to, right? Your loved ones that have crossed over. When I'm doing a reading, and if a loved one comes through, then that is who I'm speaking to. Those that have fully crossed over to the other side, and I'm able to speak to them because they've fully completed the transition, right? And they are at a place where they feel peace. And sometimes our loved ones didn't feel peace in this lifetime, but because they've gone through this process, because they're no longer in the human body, they feel peace, right? They have a much more wider sense of clarity. They've got a much bigger and larger sense of their self when they're back in the spirit realm, right? When they are just fully connecting and receiving information through them as a soul out of the human body. And whenever I connect to those that have crossed over, they always come through loving. They're always expanded, and they're really light in their energy. They're not heavy, they're not stagnant, they're expanded beings, because they've fully crossed over, they've fully made that transition, and they've learned, they've healed, they've integrated. So they come through, even and this is a funny thing, even though they might not have been like that in their physical world when they were living, they become this higher version of themselves, the higher perspective of themselves when they come through in a reading. And, they come through and they're always there to support us. Our passed on loved ones that have crossed over, they can come and share messages with you. They can visit you. They can visit all their loved ones. And they can even become guides for you, like guiding you through your journey, guiding you through your purpose, helping you awaken your gifts, helping you heal on your journey. And especially if it's family, those that are family that have passed over, often their job or something that they've decided to do is to support you in whatever way that they can, as an energy, as a being, as a presence, as a guide, or to give you messages that is going to help you to heal like family wounds, ancestral wounds. That's really, really common, and they're able to do that because they essentially live in spirit, right? They live in a different dimension, but they can come and visit at any time. They're not stuck here on the earthly planes. And because we are all connected through energy, that's how it's easy to speak and communicate with them. And even if you aren't doing this work as a psychic medium, you have probably still felt your passed on loved ones. You've maybe seen a sign, a butterfly, a bird, a rainbow, whatever that is, music that's come on the radio that was their favorite song, a smell that reminds you of them. That's them giving you messages and to let you know that they're always there. They're not in this physical realm, but they can come and visit at any time. And they do. Now, what happens when a spirit gets stuck? Okay, so when a spirit actually doesn't cross over, it's what I call an earthbound energy. And yes, these are things. This is a reality. And some people might call them ghosts, but let's just stick with earthbound energy. It's a spirit, it's a soul that has crossed over, from being human and is stuck. It hasn't fully transitioned and crossed over to the other side. Now, there's a lot of commentary on why spirits don't fully cross over. But from my experience, it's always about vibration or belief or some level of attachment. Okay, so what I've seen throughout my years doing this work is that some souls don't fully cross over if their death has been like super sudden, like out of nowhere. Maybe it's been an accident or an overdose, or maybe it's been like really like particularly traumatic. And what happens is sometimes that soul can be blindsided and it's actually too disorientated to cross over, and sometimes it doesn't even realize that it's dead. And another reason that I've seen personally is that a spirit won't cross over after they pass out of fear. And guess where this fear usually comes from? Yep, I'll say it. It's religion. That guilt, the shame, the fear that these souls, when they die, truly believe that they're not getting into heaven. Because that was being so heavily drilled into so many people throughout the ages through religion. Like, I have personally witnessed that being the case with a soul, with a spirit who got stuck between dimensions and was too afraid to step into the light because they genuinely thought they were going to hell. They genuinely thought that light was a trap and they were going to be tricked by the devil. Like, I know this sounds full on and dramatic, but this is the experience. This is why when these doctrines are so ingrained and fear is so instilled in someone, this can be a reason that they don't fully cross over. And so those are the main reasons. And the other main reason that I've seen is if someone has a really strong attachment to certain people that are still living, or to certain places, or they feel like they have unfinished business. That's why some people think their house is haunted, or they think they are haunted, because sometimes a soul will not cross and be lingering around the energy of a house or a person for that exact reason. And I'm going to tell you the story of this was actually the very first soul that was stuck that I helped cross to the other side. So, gosh, this was back in like 2014. And I was at a 1,200-year-old manor estate for the weekend. And I was there basically doing ghost busting for, well, like, with my psychic development class. We did like a weekend away, and we went to this like very old, very like active, let's say, 1200-year-old house that had been turned into like an events place that you could rent, and like a hotel. Like, it was a beautiful manor, and like this beautiful venue, like you could get married there or whatever. And it had guest rooms, it had like a whole ballroom, like it was beautiful, and it was in this like beautiful countryside, but it was obviously very, very old. It was like a 200-year-old house. And where it was situated in the country in England, it was bang on the middle of where the Civil War took place. So again, it was a hotbed of paranormal activity, let's say. So this is what we went for. Like, we actually didn't tell the event, we didn't tell the venue that we were there to tune into all of the ghostly happenings or the energies within the place, but that's what we went there for. So one of the things that we actually did, that I first met an earthbound soul, was we went into the right wing of the guest rooms. We went into one of the rooms, and this is one of the rooms that one of the girls was staying in, and I kid you not, the second I walked into that room, it hit me in the face with this like heavy, stagnant energy. Like, the room just felt like the energy just changed from light to like, I don't want to say dark, but it was heavy. It was like I was walking through like mud or something when I walked into this room. And then I smelled what I can only describe as like a boggy pond-like smell. Now, when a place like this very old house, very old manor house, like, this place is so rich in history. It's held centuries of human activity, and obviously being like a hotspot for what happened in the Civil War, it's like layered with unresolved emotions. It's layered with different like energies, right? And this is why it was actually such a great place to, the things that I saw and I felt in this place, honestly, I can't describe it. It was a great place to learn, let's just say that. And when I walked into this room, that kind of like boggy, damp smell that I was smelling actually wasn't physically there. That was my psychic sense of clairalience, which is a psychic sense of clear smelling. That was that intuitive sense actually registering the heaviness, the stagnation of the earthbound frequency that was actually living in this room. So what I did, like, I was able to use my psychic and mediumship gifts, and I was able to tune into this energy to find out that it was a man. It was the energy of this man who had actually passed, but he had stayed behind and was lingering in this particular location because he didn't want to leave his daughter. He had passed and his daughter was alive. And I think he'd passed really suddenly from what I remember. And, now obviously by 2014, the time that I was there, his daughter was long gone, long passed away. But this particular soul was just like looping in this imprint. And this is what happens, right? Like, many people, many souls who die suddenly or traumatically can kind of stay in this like replay of their last moments, or of like what's like their most dominant feeling. So like guilt or fear or shame, or in this case, it was actually his worry for his daughter. Like, it was this worry for a loved one, and this sense of like unfinished duty was actually what he told me why he didn't fully cross over and he was staying there. But it was kind of less like he was actively choosing to stay there, and more like, like a record that keeps spinning. That's kind of what was happening. It was like he was stuck. Like, that was a perfect way to describe it. He was just stuck. It's like this record that keeps spinning until something or someone kind of interrupts it. And he was definitely stuck in that loop. Like, for hundreds of years, he was stuck in that loop. And in fact, he literally had zero awareness of time, because earthbound spirits don't experience linear time like we do, like I said. He actually thought his daughter was still alive, even though she passed, oh my God, decades ago. So because I was able to use my mediumship and my energy healing gifts, I was able to help him. I was able to guide him to the light where his daughter was waiting for him. And this is a process called psychopomp, or soul guiding work. And as soon as I took him, and I worked with my spirit guides, and I did like a whole process to support him and to let him know that he'd crossed over, and to let him know that there was a better place for him, and that, his daughter was waiting for him. And he agreed, he consented, and we were able to shift that. And I kid you not, as soon as I was able to release him into the light, as soon as I was able to support him to cross, the room felt instantly lighter. And that like boggy, gross pond smell had completely gone. Like, it completely gone. The air was cleaner, the air was clear, it was brighter all of a sudden, and like the whole energy of this room just shifted. It shifted from like a place I did not want to even step into like a beautiful, lovely room. And that's the validation. That's the signs of when you are tuned into the subtle signs in energy. That's how you know souls crossed. That's how you know the energy has cleared. And also his soul was ready. Like, he made himself known. He made himself very known to me the minute I walked into that room. So I could do like a psychopomp intervention where I basically acted as like a midwife for his soul. He just needed a clear channel, basically, just to show him the light and reunite him with his daughter. And actually, it was such a magical experience, really, to be honest. And that was the first experience that I had of helping a lost soul, helping an earthbound spirit to cross over. And, like, you can not only do this with souls who've been trapped for fucking years in a house, in a place, with a person, whatever it is, but you can also use your gifts to help those in the living who are also ready to cross. And do it in like a really safe and gentle and guided way too, because I've also had that experience. I had an experience a few years ago which I've spoken about in another episode, but my dad's mum was dying, and she was trying to take my dad with her. Now let me explain, because I know that sounds, you'd be like, what do you mean? But my gran was in hospital, and she was dying. She didn't have very long to live at all. And my dad, in her final moments, he got rushed into hospital, and he was in the ward beneath her. And it was something crazy, like she was like ward 4, room 33, and he was the opposite of that, like 33 and 4. It was uncanny. And again, nothing is a coincidence. The synchronicities are for a reason. And he got rushed into hospital with sepsis. His knee got infected, and it was a really quite terrifying moment, to be honest. My grandma's in her last moments, so me, obviously having the abilities, I connected with her soul. I tuned into her soul, and even though she was in Scotland and I was in Australia, I was still able to do that, because energy, I don't need to be in the physical presence of anyone to read their energy. So I connected with her soul, and I discovered when I spoke to her higher self, I spoke to her soul, she'd made a vow with him in a past lifetime, and then again in this lifetime to never leave him. And that energy, that soul contract, that vow was literally playing out as she was crossing over. It was literally killing my dad. She was trying to take his energy with him. And I know that sounds fucking dramatic, but that's exactly what was happening. So once I explained to her the consequences of what was happening, and that we needed him here, and it wasn't his time to go, and that we needed to release the soul vow, she understood, and she was able to let go, and I was able to support her with love as she passed. And again, even though I was on the other side of the world, spirit doesn't operate in distance. Like, we are all connected to energy, and you can support those that are crossing over with your psychic and mediumship gifts by doing that. You can speak to them, you can connect with them, you can tune into them, just like you would a spirit that is just like you're connecting to a spirit guide or a higher self. It's all available for you when you learn to read energy and when you learn to awaken your gifts. Now, I also want to talk about a thing called energetic imprints. So, a thing called residual energy that can actually be stuck in certain places too, right? Because back in this 1200-year-old house, there wasn't just the stuck souls of, that man that I helped move to the other side. But in this house, it was like a hotbed of energy, right? There was the energy of just intense trauma and this emotional residue because of the Civil War. And this is what can happen. It's like if there's a big event in a certain place or an area or house or land, then it can create what I call residual energy, and that gets stuck in that place. So in this particular location, in this manor, I experienced different pockets of this heavy residual energy in certain rooms. But in those rooms, it actually wasn't ghosts. It wasn't a spirit that was trapped or stuck. It was actually, how can I describe it? It's kind of like there's no conscious spirit left to cross over in these places, but the energy is like, think of a film reel of energy impressions that have been like burned into the walls, into the floors, into the land, into the building. That's kind of what it was like. And at first when I tuned into the energy, right, it was kind of like I was seeing these imprints. They were kind of, I thought was like ghosts, but it wasn't. It was basically, I was just being shown these replaying loops and replaying images and sensations. And when I tried to tune into the energy, like I spoke to my gran when she was passing her soul, like I spoke to this man that I'd helped cross over, his soul, this energy that I was now tuning into, they weren't responding intelligently to my questions the way that spirit does. So when I asked what that was and when I tuned into it, I could see and feel what's called looping imprints. They looked like spirits, or they kind of looked like people endlessly just walking this same route through this particular room. But actually what was happening, it was this energetic imprint that was just stuck in this constant loop. They weren't fully conscious spirits that were stuck, like I said. It was emotional and kinetic imprints of many people who were doing the same thing, doing the same action, during a very traumatic, emotionally explosive time together in the war in this place. And I also actually found out as well whilst I was there that this particular house was on a ley line. And if you don't know what that is, a ley line is basically like a route or a route or path of spiritual energy that the earth has or that moves through certain places. And that made sense because these, the apparitions of what looked like people or spirits just walking in a loop through this particular room and through this house and then just looping back. That's what it was. They were on a ley line, and it's like think of centuries of human passage, combined with the tragedy and the emotions of what happened on this exact spot. And the land and this house was just holding this energy, and it was basically looping in this kind of visual imprint on replay. So I was able to clear that energy as well. It wasn't moving the soul, moving a ghost on, but I was able to clear kind of the energetic film that was basically stuck. And again, the minute I did that, the energy shifted completely. And this is the thing, when you are in tune, when you have opened your psychic abilities, when you're able to feel and read and see energy, you'll be able to tune into things that are far beyond your realm of sight, realm of consciousness, and understand how interlinked, how energy works. It's so fascinating. Honestly, it's the more you go down this rabbit hole, the more things are going to be revealed to you. And oh my God, I did so much more in this 1200-year-old house. I saw wild things, I saw many apparitions, we cleared out mirror portals, I saw old soldiers in this window that we helped to cross over. I mean, there was so many things from this land and from this house that it was one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? one of the most profound teaching experiences I had in my early days of doing this work. But I just wanted to share some of those stories because it really is going to help you understand, the nature of energy, how spirit energy works, how it can imprint on a place in different ways. Especially when there's been like mass tragedy, like war, fear, death. That's why people feel the heaviness when they go to Auschwitz or they go to Anne Frank's house. That's energetic residue. That's energetic imprints. And I also wanted to, through these stories, I wanted to help you understand that death is not an end. Like, it's just a transition. And that genuinely most souls cross over to the other side like easy and smoothly, and and you can still connect with them from the other side. They become your guides. They are your helpers. They want to support you. So, if you've ever been in a place where someone that you've loved has crossed over, if you've ever wondered if they were in pain or if they crossed over okay, then, or if they're happy even, then yes, that is usually the case. And all of my experiences in working with spirit and connecting with spirit and working with those from the other side, yes, that is most of the time usually always the case. And for the souls that do linger between worlds, then they're just in a temporary state of like confusion or attachment, but they can always be guided home. And that's the important thing. They can always be guided home. And as always, I just want to thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe or leave a review. I appreciate those so much. And if you are interested in developing your own psychic and mediumship gifts, then you can join the Rebel Psychic School, my psychic and mediumship certification program, which will be launching again very soon. Or there's a bunch of ways you can work with me one-on-one to develop your unique gifts, your unique path. And until next time, from myself and from Spirit and all of the loved ones, all of your guides that are here present today and supporting you and probably guided you to this very episode, we're sending you so much love.